Hey, what's up? It's Evan, and today we are going to be previewing the Nikon D800o. This was just announced today, April 1st, 2013, and what I want to do is go through all the different features and show you everything that it can do. It is a brand new camera that is unlike anything that Nikon has ever released before. The O in Nikon D800o stands for open, as in open source platform. I'm gonna talk about that later on in the video. So let's get right into it. Alright, so let's just get the predictable stuff out of the way, the stuff that's really boring. The frame rates got kicked up from like 5 frames per second to 6, big deal. And the megapixels got kicked up from 36 to 40. But other than that, I'm gonna go through all the new revolutionary features that they're offering, and I have 2 pages of notes here of all of this stuff. So the very first thing, there is now sound detection shutter triggering. So there's literally an option on the camera now to utilize the built-in microphone, and you can set the level of dB that once it passes that point, it then takes a shot or pushes the record button for video. Now, along with the sound detection shutter triggering, there is also the motion detection shutter triggering. So why would you want to use shutter triggering or sound triggering? The reason why is because, let's say you're photographing, there's this awesome tree and it's in a perfect position, and you wish that a bird would just land on a specific part of the tree, so you could take a picture of a bird in that specific part of the tree. Well, you can now do that. Just compose your shot and then turn on motion detection shutter triggering, and then leave your camera there for hours until a bird pops up in that one place, and then your camera will just start taking all the pictures for you. So again, that's going to be really cool. And sound detection, audio triggering, again, it's basically the same thing, but it might be a little bit better for different circumstances. I can just trigger the sound by using my voice alone. And again, you can also record video once it detects motion as well. And you're probably going to be asking, dang, that probably takes up a lot of battery life if I'm going to be setting up my camera for a long time just to try to capture motion when I'm not by the camera. And that is very true, but you can also plug in the camera to a wall outlet now, so you don't have to worry about the camera going bye-bye on you. Another really awesome new feature about this camera is you can literally map out the ISO sensitivity across the sensor in different ways. This is extremely cool because what you can do is go inside the camera's menu system and select you can actually create a gradient going across the sensor. So the top of the sensor will record an ISO sensitivity of about 100 or so, and then the bottom of the sensor, you can set it to say record an ISO sensitivity of 400 or so. This makes it so when you're taking pictures of landscapes, you can capture full detail, the sky and the foreground, and you don't have to use neutral gradient filters, which those cost money, they're unnecessary, and there's just another piece of glass in front of your lens that makes things more unsharp. So if you use the mappable ISO sensitivity across your sensor, you can map any sort of pattern you want on your sensor, and each pixel can be adjusted for a different ISO sensitivity. Also, there's a plethora of media formats to choose from, including JPEG, JPEG 2000, TIFF, NEF, which is the RAW files, GIF, animated GIF, PNG, and even a PDF file. You can also take new video files. So it used to be only you could take AVI files, but now they've expanded that to MPG, MP4, and MOV files. Also, it can actually record audio files from the microphone without the video track included. And again, the file types for that is WAV, MP3, FLAC, AIFF, AAC, and OGG. And you can customize the sample rate and bit depth to any number that you want to. There's also a live histogram while you're in live view mode taking pictures. The bulb mode on the camera has been updated. There's basically two different bulb modes. There's one where you just hold your finger down on the button and it takes the picture for however long you're holding your finger down on the button. But now there's a new second bulb mode where if you push down on the button once, it will continuously be taking the exposure after that point. So you push down on the button once, it takes the exposure, and then you push down on it again, and then it stops the exposure. So that's extremely useful, especially when you're taking very long exposures of, say, star trails or something like that. It also has a new feature of autofocus bracketing. So you can literally program it to set the autofocus point and take a picture, focus a little bit forward, take another picture, focus a little bit forward again, take another picture, so you can get the full depth of field throughout the entire scene, and then stack them later on the computer to get a razor sharp image that's in focus from front to back, tack sharp. You can now do that with autofocus bracketing, which is, again, no one has released that feature before the D800o, because the D800o it's fully customizable in every single way. So again, more features. Let's keep on doing this. The autofocus assist lamp on the camera. There's actually a little button on the camera where you can program that button to actually turn on the autofocus lamp whenever you want it to be on. So, and that lamp is actually really, really bright. So if you're in the dark and you're trying to search within your camera bag, you can literally hold the camera in your hand, push down on that button, and then your camera basically becomes a flashlight, which is, again, that's a really flippin' awesome feature if you ask me. Another really unique feature about this camera is that it has a new thing in it called, it can take a new file type. It's called XWR files or whatever. But basically what it is you can literally create a movie file of a exposure taking place in real time. So let's say you want to take a 5-second exposure with your neutral density filter on your camera, and you want the waves to be really soft, but you wanted to create a video file of that from the start of the exposure to the end of the exposure. The sensor can now literally record the action as it's happening from start to end of the exposure. So you can literally create a video file of that time range of 5 seconds, or even a 30th of a second, or whatever your time period is, and then individually select different points or frames from that video file. So that is very unique and interesting. I can see lots of different creative potentials for that. It also has a Wi-Fi feature, so you can actually control your camera using your phone, and you don't have to buy any adapter or anything for that. And it has a GPS unit installed inside the camera already. So again, all your pictures can now be geotagged automatically, and you won't have to buy a separate GPS unit. It's already in the camera. There is a video in, an HDMI in on the camera. Now, most cameras nowadays have HDMI outputs, but this has an HDMI out and an HDMI in. So you can literally grab footage from a completely different source and record it into the Nikon D800o. So it used to be that you could only view Nikon content on the camera itself. Now you can view any sort of media file. So any sort of picture file, it doesn't matter what camera you took the picture with, you can still preview the pictures on the back of the LCD screen of the Nikon D800o. And that's not limited to just picture files. You can also play video files and audio files of any kind. Well, not any kind, but the majority of all of them. There's a little thing here, you can also see how many megabytes a picture is. You couldn't do that before in previous models, but you can in this one. It also there's a new feature where it rotates. Whenever you rotate your camera, let's say clockwise, it will rotate the picture on your screen clockwise. That's never been a feature before. You can now select groups of images to delete them instead of just going through each individual file and clicking the delete button. You can also create playlists of files. So again, if you wanted to hook up the camera to the TV or something to show your family a bunch of different pictures or videos in order or something, you can create a playlist of all the best pictures and then create a slideshow from that playlist, and it will play any sort of file that you have on the camera in order, which is really, really nice. Another new thing about this camera is that all the integers are now open to be fully customized. So what do I mean by that? Remember how the EV can only be adjusted from a stop to a half a stop to a third of a stop? Now you can do that. You can still do that if you want to, and that's the default setting, but you can also change that so those go away, and it's literally now been replaced with a decimal system. So you can literally type in 0.0023 stops, overexposed or underexposed, and it'll be as accurate as that. So that is extremely accurate to get some extremely accurate exposure values. And again, the custom integers have been fully ingrained through every single feature within the camera. So again, the shutter speed, it used to be that you can only select 20 seconds or 25 seconds. Now you can do 20.235 seconds if you wanted to, or 23 seconds. You can even set the exposure to go through 8.23 hours if you wanted to. So that is actually really useful for long exposure work and stuff where you need really accurate timing. Same thing with the ISO. The ISO, it used to be you can select it in chunks, but now the ISO can be anywhere. So you can select an ISO of 128.3 if you wanted to, and you can still do it. Same thing with the aperture, although it depends on what lens you're using. The frames per second, again, it used to be 1 frame, 2 frame, 3 frames per second. Now you can select 2.5 frames per second or anything in between. The exposure value bracketing, again, it used to be, oh, do you want to bump it up 1 or 2 stops? Well, now you can, again, bump it up using a decimal system, which is really nice. There's now a white balance bracketing feature. So that was in the older models, but it used to be only that you could only bracket, say, the basic white balance settings. So that would be like tungsten, incandescent, fluorescent, etc. But now you can, if you want to, go to the decimal system where you're actually bracketing the pictures in Kelvin using any sort of integer that you want to. So you can say 100 Kelvin, 200 Kelvin, 300 Kelvin, and you can bracket the photos using those white balance integers. Again, the self-timer, it used to be only, self-timer 1 or 2 or 10 seconds. Now you can do 10.2 seconds if you wanted to, etc. The exposure delay mode, again, custom integers throughout all of this stuff. The file and folder naming is now fully customizable as well. So you can name a folder using any sort of naming system that you want to, and you can also name your files using any file name that you want to. So I can make a file, I can have my files be titled in any way I want to. So what I like to do is have the name of the camera, and then have an underscore, and then have the picture number, and then leave it there. And the picture number, again, it used to be that it used to go to up to like DSC underscore 9999, and then it reset it and went back to 0. It doesn't do that anymore. If you don't want it to, you can actually set it so the numbers just go forever. And again, the interval timer shooting, fully expandable decimals, really nice. Again, it used to be that the exposure bracketing in Nikon cameras, you could only go up to 9 stops, plus or minus 9 stops. This, it's unlimited. So if you wanted to go up 50 stops, you could do that. And and the meter still works. The meter is still very accurate. The white balance Kelvin metering system has now been changed. So it used to be that the limit was 2,500 to 10,000 Kelvin. Now it's expandable from like 0 Kelvin to 50,000 Kelvin, or whatever the number is. I don't know what it is, but it is expandable. So if you're taking photos with an infrared filter now, and you always get frustrated because the photos are all red and you can't change them in Adobe Camera Raw, well, you can now do that because Adobe Camera Raw has now updated the thing, so you can do that, plus the camera has been updated. So that's really nice that we're finally able to do that now. And again, the exposure compensation, it was limited to 5 stops. Now you can go up unlimited, any amount of stops you want to, plus or minus. And the repeating flash mode, again, it was good, but it's even better now because the exposure value for each individual flash can be customized. So you could have a first flash be +2 EV, the second flash be 1 EV, the third flash be 0 EV. So you can get all these different brightness levels throughout a flash burst. Another thing that's crazy is the frames per second. You can, it used to be that if you just hold your button down on the camera, it takes like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 frames per second in those chunks. But now what you can do is you can actually make it so that when you push the button on the camera, it loops a predetermined pattern of different frames per second integers. So what you could do is you can have 2 frames per second and then 3 frames per second, and then you can have it loop that pattern as long as you're holding your finger down on the button. So that would be like click 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 click, and it would do that pattern as long as you're holding your button down on the camera. So that's pretty cool if you want to get really technical with taking pictures of things that need precise timing. Okay, there's also another feature, a seriously cool feature, where you can actually take 2 Nikon D800os and connect them using the USB port. It's not a USB port, it's some other type of port, but all it does is it syncs up the camera, so when you take a picture with one camera, it will immediately take a picture with the other camera too, all the way down to an 8,000th of a second. So that's extremely fast, the sync rate, and that's really good for 3D photography when you need 2 cameras and you want to sync them up perfectly. So that's really nice. You can also do it with video as well, which is, again, no one has done that before. And last but not least, there is a open source mode. I'm not sure about all the technical aspects of this, but this is the biggest thing. This allows programmers to create apps for the camera. That's right, apps. And because there's a Wi-Fi feature in the camera, you can actually download them when you're around in a Wi-Fi network. So again, the apps are insane. There's all different types of different apps you can get to customize your camera's menu system, the firmware, and add and remove certain features that you don't want, tweak different features. It's just insane. You can actually play games on your camera, and there's actually an emulator, so you can load up Nintendo ROMs, and the A button and B button are mapped out on the camera, plus the directional pad that works just like the video game. So that is really, really cool, because if you're on a bus or something waiting, why would you want to bring another separate device with all that stuff on it? Just have it on your camera, which is really, really nice. A lot of this stuff is just right out of the bag. I'm surprised that Nikon would release all these features all at once, because they're way ahead of the game right now as far as any other camera out on the market when it comes to these features. So again, if you're a really technical photographer or you're a programmer, this thing is definitely going to be for you. It also comes with backlit, or not backlit, but glow-in-the-dark buttons. Every single button glows in the dark, so you can actually see what you're doing at nighttime, which is really nice. So probably the biggest features that you're going to want to use out of this camera, the decimal system, that's pretty technical. I can't really see a whole lot of people using that. But if you wanted to expand the shutter speed, you can now do that. So you can now expand it past 30 seconds, which is extremely useful. And the camera meters past 30 seconds as well. It will calculate the exposure for you. So you're no longer limited to 30 seconds. You can go up to 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 2 hours, whatever you want to do, and it calculates the exposure perfectly for you. Oh, there's one more thing I forgot to mention. Now this one is really crazy. They've actually inside the camera where the sensor is, there's these two little claw things, and what those things are is they grab on to customizable crystals that you can actually install in front of the camera's sensor. So you can bend light in certain artistic ways and get certain colors out of them and see what you're doing in real time in live view mode. It's just insane. The creative possibilities with this camera are, again, they're unlike anything else on the market. So this camera is insane. The only other thing I could ever think that would even come close to this camera would be the Franken camera, which is an open source camera, but it's really big and really expensive and really rare. So the Nikon D800o is basically slamming everyone out of the water right now because this camera is just insane. So you might be thinking that a lot of these features sound crazy, that like it's too much customization. I don't want all these features. It takes too long to adjust them and I'm just gonna get confused. I mean, my camera is not a toaster oven. My camera is a camera. But I agree with you, but I also understand that you don't need to use these features if you don't want to. They're hidden by default unless you go into a certain option to enable them. By default, the camera ships just like a normal camera. So again, none of this decimal system isn't going to be placed or anything, but you can turn it on if you want to. It's not something that is shipped on by default when the camera ships to you. You have to turn it on later. If you think about it, cell phones. Do you think the inventors of cell phones said that, oh man, maybe we shouldn't allow users to download apps? That's just a bad idea, because what they're going to do is they're going to get so confused. There's so many different options and so many different apps. It just makes things so confusing with cell phones, and I just don't understand it. And I think it's a really bad idea. I think a cell phone should be a cell phone, not a camera or any other sort of thing that you can do with an app. Well, those are the same type of people that are saying that they wish cell phones didn't exist and that everything was landline or everything was, you know, telegrams or something. I don't know. Cell phones are, they're pretty useful. Even though there's millions of apps that you can download, I'm not forced to learn and understand the millions of apps that I can download. All I need to really learn if I wanted to use a cell phone is how to use the cell phone feature, which is actually very simple to do. All I have to do here is click this little button on the phone that says phone, and now I can use my cell phone as an actual phone, not as any sort of other thing. So it's very similar to the Nikon D800o. You can use the camera as a regular camera, as a regular DSLR, but you can also now use it for any other sort of thing that you want to, which is really, really cool. So, I'll keep you guys I'll keep you guys up to date about this. The price, I'm not sure what it's going to be. I really have no idea what the price is going to be. My guess is about $4,000. The D800 was $3,000. But I'm thinking the D800o is going to be around $4,000. That's just my guess, because again, there is no other camera like this, so it is a big deal. Yeah, if you ask me, I'm getting it. I love it. I'm going to get it as soon as it gets released. The release date, I don't know when it's going to be, but I'll keep you guys updated on the website. Psst.